This review is brought to you in part by Rogers Hobby Center in Saginaw, Michigan, where the fun begins. Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the new release of the Revell 1966 Fleet Side Pickup in 1/25th scale. This kit is number 85-7225, and it represents the 66 version of the venerable Chevy pickup. It's a repackage, really, of the 64 and 65 kits, and the copyright part is 96. But under Revell's new Revell of Germany skill ratings, it's a new skill level 4, which means it's an intermediate model. The kit has 112 parts and comes molded in white, chrome, clear, and clear red with vinyl tires. You'll also get water slide decals and the typical book format instructions. This build has only the V8 option and is very detailed motor. The interior is multiple parts with dash decals and seat decals. The chassis is detailed and the suspension is all separate multiple parts for extra detailing. The body is a multiple parts and must be partially assembled for painting. The tires are Tampo printed wide white walls. And this kit only has parts for a stock build with no options for customization. Overall, the finished dimensions are 7 5/8 inches long, 3 inches wide, and 2.5 inches high. Here are the decals for this kit. As you can see, they're very colorful and the registry is good. I strongly recommend using some decal setting solution to make it fit those contours, but as always, use the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products mentioned here in the review for your own protection. For most of the construction, I use Model Master liquid cement and sometimes a slow setting tube glue, but other adhesives are used too for strength like super glue and white glue for clear parts. Mostly the paints are Tamiya acrylic bottle paints that are shot through an airbrush, or rattle can paints that can be used for things like primers. Construction starts with the motor, and we'll assemble most of it before we paint. The block heads, valve covers, intake, oil filter, filler tube, the timing cover, and the oil pan are all put together. And then the block is orange with an aluminum transmission. The starter is black with a copper solenoid. The oil filter is blue, and I use some Slicks decals, oil filters, for details on it because it really adds to this motor. Now the fan is black with flat black belt, and the alternator is aluminum. The carb is copper. Now install these parts to the motor. Now with most of the motor painted here and assembled, paint the manifold a steel color. And notice that I didn't use the kit supplied distributor or coil. I wanted to add a little extra detail to this model, so I made a homemade distributor and coil, and I drilled out the hole for the distributor shaft, and then I used a wiring diagram that I found online, and then I installed the shaft with super glue and drilled out the locations on the cylinder heads for the spark plugs, and I cut a piece of small black wire for the boots around those smaller plug wires and glued them into place, matching the diagram to the model. With the manifold added, the motor is complete except for the air cleaner, which we'll install later on. Here's a view of the right side of the motor. Now we can start the interior. I painted mine a flat tan to go with the body color as a contrasting color. Now paint the floor and the underside of the floor pan flat black. Then paint the door panels and detail the cranks and the latches with some silver paint. Then the seat is tan with a decal 17 and 18 for the inserts. The pedals are black. Install the seat, the pedals, and the door panels. And to get the seat cover decals to conform, you'll need quite a few coats of decal setting solution, but then they'll settle in. Now pull out the parts and assemble the dash and the steering column. I painted my dash tan to match the rest of the interior, and then decals 8, 9, and 10 go on the dash, and the rest is silver highlights. You can use a silver Sharpie, and the shifters are silver and black. The wheel is silver and black, and then add the clear instrument panel. Now install the wheel onto the column and the column into the dash. Then install the dash into the interior and the slots provided. Now we can start to assemble the body by pulling these parts out of the kit. It's a multiple step process, and we'll go back later on and add some details and trim after paint. But to ease painting and benefit the overall look, we'll assemble the cab now and paint it as a unit. Add the over roof, then add the firewall and the cab back. Then install the front header panel, and the radiator will be painted and installed later. Now assemble the bed's rear corners and glue the tailgate into place. Now assemble the hood's sides and front onto the top, and note that the hood does not fit properly. It's been an issue with this kit for the lifespan of its previous releases, and to repair it, you'll need to sand and fit the sides slowly and test fit the hood until you get a proper fit. Wet sand all of the body parts with some fine grit sandpaper, then wash them thoroughly. When fully dried, use a high quality primer and paint the inside and outside of the cab, hood, and bed with some primer. I decided to paint my model as a two-tone, so the roof is going to be white and the remainder of the body done in green. So first I painted white around the entire roof and the pillars down to the tops of the doors. And then using some good quality tape, some 3M vinyl fine line tape, I masked off the paint line. Then I covered the remainder of the roof with some low tack masking tape. Now just sand the cab area again to smooth it out. Next I painted the base section a color of Gravity Colors GC225 green. It's called Highland green, and it's a two-stage part. After you get the paint painted for your base coats, you have to cover it with a clear coat for shine. But before I put the clear coat on, I like to put my decals on to give them a more finished look with clear coat over the top. So using some of that setting solution I mentioned earlier, apply your largest decals first and then work the smaller ones on, smooth it out, and then let it dry. Even trucks in the 60s had a lot of chrome on them, so I used a foil application that you can buy at online hobby stores, and you just apply it like tape and then trim off the excess with a very sharp hobby blade. Now get these parts out of the kit and paint the radiator flat black as well as the shroud. Then assemble the shroud onto the radiator and insert that into the cab. Now using a black marking pen, go around the windows, the windshield there, to replicate the rubber trim. Now install the glass into the cab using some white glue or clear part cement. Gather up these parts, then paint the battery black with steel posts, and then the brake booster is black with a steel master cylinder, and the overflow tank is white with a black cap. The emblems are red with black on them. Attach the door handles, emblems, and gas cap with some super glue, then install the battery, assemble and install the brake booster and the master cylinder, and add the overflow tank to the engine bay. Now note the copyright script here, and if you're building for contest, you're going to want to scrape that off with a blade and sand it smooth. Then just install the interior into the cab. I wanted to personalize my model, so I printed out the copy of my logo with an inkjet printer on plain paper, covered it up with some glossy cellophane tape, and then trimmed it out to apply to the license tag later. Now get the parts out to finish up the back end and paint the chains flat black with steel hasps, and the tag holder is flat black too. Then install the tail and backup lights with some white glue and add the hasps to the tailgate. Then add the license tag to the tag holder and glue that in place with some white glue. Gather up the parts for the chassis and paint the chassis, the front and rear suspension, the tire mounts, the tie rods, and the sway bar flat black. Assemble and paint the rim flat black, and then the exhaust is a steel color with an aluminum muffler, and the shocks are red. Attach the tie rods to the front suspensions and install that to the chassis with the front shocks. Then add the exhaust. Install the rear suspension and the shocks and the sway bar, and assemble the tire and rim into the tire holder and attach that to the chassis. Attach the rear bumper in place too. Now pull out the drive shaft and paint that a gunmetal color and install it along with the motor in place, inserting the drive shaft into the transmission and the differential in the back. Gather up the parts for the wheels And to give the tires a used look, just press and roll the tread onto a sheet of fine sandpaper. It roughs up the tire enough to remove the glossy surface from the tread. Then assemble the rim fronts and backs and paint them black. Add the hubcap. The tires are non-directional, so location's not important. Add the rims to the tires, either white or black wall out. Now snap a tire onto the axle spindles on both the front suspension and on the rear suspension, and you have a rolling chassis ready to go. It looks like a good base to finish the rest of our model. Now just install the cab into place using some glue and add the bed to the chassis. Now the decal for the bed is really nice and it looks great, so install that too, and remember to use some setting solution on it to get good adherence. Now paint the heater and the air cleaner black, and the hood latch and the hoses are flat black too. Install the lower and upper hoses from the radiator to the motor, and then add the hood latch in place. Now decal number 5 goes on the heater and it gets installed, and decal number 6 goes on the air cleaner and it's installed. Then add the wipers and the mirrors with some super glue. We'll complete the front end now by using a wash of 50/50 flat black and thinner in the grill, and then brushing it off of the highlights to reveal the chrome, and then install the headlights using some white glue. Well, there you have it. This is an overall great build with just a few details that didn't work out well. The hood fit has been an issue ever since they started making this kit, but with a little fitting it goes together okay. And also the interior has some fit issues, but the sanding stick works wonders there too. Now overall everything else goes together quite well, and the fit and finish with the rest of the kit is very good. In fact, this is a contest base if I've ever seen one. So if you're looking for a nice vintage truck for your shelf with some great looking white wall tires, this is the kit to buy. We hope you liked this premium quality step-by-step review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and also at our website, www.rightonreplicas.com. Thanks!